sisters, it's time to talk about what Hindus believe about death. Now, there are many different beliefs about death in Hinduism. There are many different beliefs, period, on anything in Hinduism because it has grown organically over the years, over the thousands of years of the records that we have as far as the beliefs going back. Of course, Hinduism goes much further back than we have historical records, but it has changed and evolved. Yet, every single time it changed and evolved, there was no definite rejection of a piece of Hinduism. So everything kind of was just added on to this vast spiritual system. And I say spiritual system because Hinduism is not like a religion as we know religion in the West. It is not something that demands that you do this or that in order to be Hindu. It is not something that commands you to do this or that in order to call yourself a Hindu or be practicing. You can be an atheist and be a Hindu. You can be somebody who believes in Jesus Christ and still be Hindu. It isn't about confining you to what you must believe. It's about understanding yourself, your relationship to the multiverse, and how you can reach absolute truth, absolute realization of truth, and your practice of doing so between where we are now and that ultimate truth. Now, you might ask, okay, what are the different main sections of belief about death in Hinduism? We have Bhakti Yoga, which is usually most Bhakti Yoga followers follow A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and it's a long title. And this section of Bhakti Yoga, which is the largest now, we can call it Hare Krishna, it believes that Krishna is the ultimate form of God, and that getting closer to Krishna is getting closer to reaching the absolute beyond the cycle of birth and death. That Krishna is the main avatar of Vishnu, and Vishnu is the ultimate form of God. Now, if you ask somebody who is in Kriya Yoga, they will say that Shiv is this ultimate form of God, the spirit beyond creation, and that it isn't enough to just worship God, to just look up to God as creator and try to get close through faith. It's about becoming one with God. The vast majority of people who follow Shiv understand that it is about purifying ourselves and enlightening ourselves in a way, reaching moksha, in a way that allows us to become not a separate thing from the absolute truth, the absolute form beyond all forms, that which is in formlessness. It isn't enough to worship that. We have to become that. If you ask somebody who is a Jnana yogi or follows Jnana yoga, he will probably say you have to learn as much as you can and experience that knowledge before you can have a definitive viewpoint on God, before you can have a definitive belief system. It is all about expansion of knowledge and true experience of that knowledge. This is why Jnana Yoga is very rarely understood by most people. It isn't just about the path of knowledge. It's about having true personal experience of that knowledge. This is what makes it a very hard path. All these paths are hard once you get to the higher echelons of them. But if you ask somebody who practices Tantra, the practices become very easy to fall from, very easy to lose your way in. But it comes down to using your sexual energy, but not to the point of satisfaction, but cultivating that energy and directing it into a combination of the chakras along the spine, and then the ultimate experience of various degrees of enlightenment in the first the heart chakra, and then the throat chakra, and then of course the crown chakra. And there are multiple chakras, and they're just the ones that we know about, but there's also, I think, 134 or 44 in total. There are a lot more chakras than people know. Most people just know the basic 7, and really the basics are the 11 different chakras. But directing that sexual energy up is what Tantra is, and allowing it to connect one to the ultimate source, and not allowing it to flow out in sexual satisfaction. if you ask somebody about death in regards, and they follow karma yoga, they might say that through action in this world, proper action, detachment from the fruits of action, but through following action in the way that you improve the way you will yourself in this world, the way that you act in this world to help other people. It is through the action of helping other people and acting within yourself that you achieve moksha, liberation. But I briefly explain these different, paths, these different yogas, to kind of show, just in the yogic systems, the differentiation of belief on how one should live and achieve godhood, achieve oneness with the Godhead, rather, or become it, or worship enough to where you join it in the end, a bhakti yogi would accept. Now, when it comes to death, the vast majority of Hindus believe that reincarnation exists. Reincarnation is a thing. There are many atheistic Hindus who don't believe in reincarnation, but, and Hindus don't push out atheists. That's what's so great about Hinduism. Nobody is really pushed out. It's all about a continuing conversation about consciousness and the meaning of everything. But the belief in reincarnation is pretty vast in Hinduism. And briefly going over reincarnation is that based on the actions of your past lives and the life that you live in, you are born into a life that is meant to reward and punish you based on your previous actions. And with the ultimate goal of enlightening your soul to its true nature and showing how its actions in the past were futile or proper, depending on what birth you achieve. This can take some very strange forms. It's not always in the negative, but if you were a very racist person, for instance, let's say you're a white man who just really hated black people and called them the N-word and just really went after them, you might be born as a black person in your next life. And for instance, if you were a wealthy person, just used your wealth for your own luxury and comfort, and you didn't care about anybody else, you might be born as a poor person. Now, here's something very important to understand. It's not always in the negative. Sometimes you do great things and you get a great result. You become a king, perhaps. Most of the time, it's a mesh of the two, good and bad, to where there are certain aspects of your life now that were influenced because of your good karma, and then there's certain aspects of your life that are negative, and that you have trouble with, obstacles that you encounter in this life that are the result of the bad karma of your past actions. And karma is really the messenger, the force that through which dharma, which is the grander scope of the universe, the fabric of reality, initiates our education through. Now, it's important to realize that even if you see somebody in a terrible position right now in this life, and you're saying, okay, they must have done something bad in their past life or earlier in this life, if karma still affects you literally in this life, actions that you take in this life from second to second. It's a very vast force to try to understand, but just because they're in a bad position, you shouldn't just say, oh, it's obviously their karma. You should realize that to judge somebody that way, to take the role of dharma, and to take account and think that you can judge in the same way that reality can, that the universe can, that God can, or the gods being different functions of the one God. That is the ultimate hubris. That is the ultimate pride. That is the ultimate prideful agency that you should never take up, because if you're saying, okay, that person obviously deserves to be poor or have that disease, then you're likely to get that punishment yourself because of your pride. Now, moving on to direct beliefs about death. Now, many Hindus believe that you will go to, if you do enough good action in this world, you will go to Swarga. Now, I'm not going to say what percentage of Hindus, because that would be a futile endeavor, but many Hindus believe that you'll go to Swarg, and you'll be with the Devas in basically their paradise, where you get to enjoy every desire that you have until your good karma runs out. And then you come back down here to realize that desire is not the path, and then you continue along your path. You don't go back to a lesser degree after you reach that paradise of where you enjoy your senses, but you come back here and to continue along right where you left off in this world. So there is a system of reward, but understand that achieving every satisfaction of your desire and being in a place like that will only last as long as your good karma lasts, and then you'll have to return here to continue your education. Now, if you, not all Hindus call it Swarg. Some call it paradise or other names. Now, if you do enough really terrible things, like you have to do very terrible things, because reincarnation involves you going through the evolutions as a mineral, animal, plants, animals, and you finally reach being a human. But if you use your humanity to the worst ends, and you do terrible things, then you might go to Narg, which is the opposite of Swarg. It is a place of darkness and fear, as Paramahansa Yogananda said. It is not a place of fire, and really the fire is the fire of desire that is not satisfied constantly. That's what the fire of hell it really is. But darkness and fear is what is in Narg. And you go there if you do some very terrible things. If you're a serial murderer who knows what you're doing, you're not just crazy, but you know what you're doing, and you cause as much pain and havoc as you possibly can, and are aware of it. You're not just somebody who's completely insane, because that's a slightly not as bad karma, because you're not aware of what you're doing. But if you're aware of it, you might go to Narg for a while and live in decay and fear and corruption for as long as your bad karma, your negative karma, needs to be acted out for your soul to learn. Now, none of this ever, Swarg and Narg never really touch your soul, but it educates your soul. The soul that we aren't usually in touch with. The thing that's speaking to you right now is the ego. I'm speaking to you with my ego, and this is connected to my personhood right here as Hunter Salazar on this earth. But the soul is just behind everything. Touching that is what most Hindus try to do, is touch the soul, become one with the soul. In the Upanishads, it might be called a jiva or jiva mukta, but it might also be called Atman. But really, it's just the piece of soul that all souls were combined at the very beginning, before creation, before God became creation. All souls were combined, and then God separated all the souls to experience himself, and we all went out, and now we're separate pieces trying to work back to the one whole. And this whole exercise, through all the different dimensions, through all the different lives we have, is piecing together with other souls, and this is God experiencing himself. That's why we exist. That's why all this is happening. Now, what I would recommend you referring to, is two sources if you want to know about death, what Hindus believe about death. One is the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita, as it is by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, is a wonderful copy. But I also recommend the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, written by Swami Kriyananda, as remembered by Swami Kriyananda, but really the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda, which is Swami Kriyananda's master. That is golden. I've read that. I've listened to the audiobook multiple times. That will give you the commentary you need most. The Bhagavad Gita as it is by Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, that will give you the bare bones and kind of the stint towards Bhakti Yoga. But I prefer the writings of Paramahansa Yogananda and his ideas of Kriya Yoga. Now, the other text in general that I would recommend is the Katha Upanishad, A Dialogue with Death. Now, this book, the Katha Upanishad, A Dialogue with Death, is basically an Upanishad, which is one of the, the Upanishads were even before, they were after the Vedas, which is the original, like, Hindu scripture, I guess you could say, as much as Hindus have scripture. Then we have the Upanishads, and then we have the Bhagavad Gita later. But the Upanishads are written by, there's 108 as far as my memory goes, and they're written by sages that we don't know the names of. The sages even say in them, why do you want to know our name? Just look at the wisdom, practice it for yourself. So we don't know who wrote the Upanishads, any one of the sages. The Vedas are often described as the first Hindu scriptures are often described as the grass. The Upanishads are the cow that eats the grass, and the Bhagavad Gita is often described as the milk the milk milked from the cow. And if you understand the relationship between these, it's kind of this constant purifying until we can actually drink the knowledge. But I actually prefer the Upanishads, to be completely honest. You could say I prefer the cow. Katha Upanishad, A Dialogue with Death, it's a commentary. It's the Upanishad and the commentary by Swami Chinmayananda. This is a wonderful book to understand how a lot of Hindus believe about death and just death itself. This is what this is really about, understanding death. And there's a few quotes that I want to read in the short amount of time that I have left. Because if I make my YouTube videos too long, I find that they don't upload from my phone, unfortunately. I've been using my phone for all of my YouTube videos. I hate to break it to you, apps in my phone, and green screen, of course. But I'm very basic. I don't have a huge setup. Anyway, let's go to page 126, and let's go to, you know what? No, this is where we should start. Now this is from the Upanishad. The intelligent Atman, soul inside of a man or woman, or every human basically, is not born, nor does he die. He did not spring from anything, and nothing sprang from him. Unborn, eternal, everlasting, ancient. He is not slain, although the body is slain. So this kind of speaks about don't be attached to the body, because the body is just a cloak. It's just the outer surface of who you truly are, which is basically the soul. What you're trying to get your ego to understand and get close to, and to relinquish its attachment to body, desire, pride, and materialistic desire in this world. And the hardest part for a human being, well, the two hardest things for a human being to become unattached to and to really reach their soul through doing, because these are the two hardest, is attachment to name and fame and sexual desire. These two, Paramahansa Yogananda would say, are the two things that are the hardest for humans to relinquish in order to get in touch with your soul and to get that much closer to the spirit beyond creation, to go higher up in dimensions. I should mention that Swarg and Narg, these are very close to Earth, but there are higher dimensions that are beyond Swarg and Narg, and once you reach those levels beyond Earth, then you get closer and closer to the spirit beyond creation. And it is said that even the gods must come back here to learn, must come back here to become enlightened, that even the gods aren't necessarily definitively closer to the spirit beyond creation, but they have achieved a certain function because of their reliability in the cosmos. Okay, so there's another couple quotes I want to read real quick, if I can. Let's see. Now, this is not from the Upanishad. This is part of the commentary. To the materialist, the body is all that is, and life is a manifestation that is incidental to the occasion, when the limbs and the sense organs are assembled together to form a body. To them, the warmth of pulsating life is not a divine power presiding over the destinies of the body, but it is a byproduct. Just as when betel leaves, lime, and nut are chewed together, a third entity, the red color, becomes the byproduct, which in fact is not a quality in any one of the three things when chewed separately. Similarly, they claim when the parts of the body are all assembled together by Prakriti, nature, life manifests. And to such a team of believers, death is disappearance of the body, and so of the life into a zero. Out of zero, the life comes back, plays out its uncertain games for a time, and into zero, back again, it disappears. Let's talk about materialists. This philosophy is but a hollow drumbeat to any thinking individual. For out of nothing a thing cannot come, nor can a thing disappear, indeed, to become nothing. On examining closely the arguments of the nihilists, we can very easily find their self-contradicting stand. They argue to establish that the ultimate truth is non-existence. According to them, non-existence existed, which is certainly a statement of self-contradiction. Shankaracharya takes up the same argument to thrash the nihilists out of the field of serious consideration. If we are to accept the entire argument raised by the nihilists, we come to conclude that they have positively known the non-existent state. That is, they have a positive knowledge of this negative state called non-existence, which they do not. To Sankarya and Vedantins, sorry for the pronunciation, the knower or the knowledge that knows the non-existence is the supreme truth, and the knower is us. In us, knows no decay, disease, or death, says Shruti. So basically he's saying that materialistic people say they have knowledge of that which is non-existent just because because they can't measure us where we go to after we die. But that is hardly the case, as he argues. Now, the final thing I want to read is, actually, it's really a point. Lord Death, Yama, which is kind of the Lord of Death that enacts death and makes sure all the karma is counted for each person and gives them their just rewards or punishments. Usually you don't fall into this slot where you fall into Yama or the god of death, basically, hands, unless you are basically kind of unclaimed and you are not associated with higher forms of God. At least that's as far as my understanding goes. Okay, so he's talking to kind of a disciple, Nachiketa. Yama, Lord Death, says, "On this point, even the gods have doubted in old times. Verily, the subject is very subtle. It is not easy to understand. O Nachiketa, choose another boon. Do not press me on this. Give this up for me." He's basically testing his disciple, saying that, you know, the knowledge of what happens after you die and the truth about life and death is the highest knowledge. So ask for something else. And he's really seeing if Nachiketa will ask for something else. He wants to give him the knowledge, but he's testing him to see if he'll choose anything else but the vastest knowledge about life and death, which I've touched upon here, but I understand very little. I'd like to say I'm not a master at this. At any rate, we've reached the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching. I'll probably be producing further parts of this because I wasn't able to cover everything, but thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and please shoot that thumbs up down there if you like this video at all. If you want to comment, ask questions, say I got something wrong, feel free to do so in the comment section on YouTube below, and I will see all of you